Hello, you happy horror hounds. Sugar Pants here, back with another tempestuous tape to tantalize your taste buds. Man, alliteration is awesome. Today's serving is 1981's Bloody Birthday, but it also went by Creeps or Hide and Go Kill, a tawdry tale of murderous minors all born under a bad sign. No, seriously, this whole movie is about kids born during a solar eclipse, and for some reason that means they all become psychopaths. But how much sleaze can we expect from a movie starring pint-sized punks? Well, let's run down the sleaze docket to let you know what this movie's got for us all. We have 8 dead bodies, 6 naked breasts, 2 naked butts, 2 cups blood, 1 strangulation, multiple shovels to the face, 1 grand slam skull, 1 bullet to the skull, 1 arrow to the eye, 1 truck smushin', gratuitous astrology nonsense, Tom Peepery, and 1 Eric Estrada poster. Our movie begins at the hospital where several expecting mothers are about to pop. The doctor rolls up in his convertible and approaches a nurse who's watching a solar eclipse without protective eyewear. They go inside and we get the audio of multiple women giving birth.
It's a boy, Mrs. Taylor.
Hang on a second. The movie just told us it's June 9th, 1970, and California. Well, there was a solar eclipse that year, but it was in March, and it was only seen as a total eclipse along the eastern seaboard. Wow, not even 2 minutes in and I'm already not able to trust this movie. Shame, shame. The nurses make comments about how it's weird to have several births happen at the exact same time, but 2 boys and 1 girl are born healthy and screaming. Skip ahead almost 10 whole years to June 1st, 1980, and we join a couple of teens playing ambulance in the cemetery.
Red light.
I've heard an ambulance stopping for a red light.
It's funny because she tells him to stop and he doesn't. Loverboy keeps pawing until her shirt pops open and the girl says someone might see. But the power of boners makes for creative solutions, so he leads her to an open grave to continue the heavy petting. Once inside, the camera does a tracking shot to give us the idea that something's approaching. Some dirt falls into the grave and the guy steps up to take a look and gets bashed in the face with a shovel. The girl stands up and is lassoed by a jump rope and hung by her neck. The guy tries to save her, but is bashed again. The 2 fall to the ground, and dirt begins to fall onto their bodies. We cut to Joyce doing her astrology homework. Not astronomy, which is an actual science, astrology, for high school. She's wearing her Beats by Ray Dio Shack, so she doesn't hear her little brother Timmy sneak in through the window. That is until he accidentally kicks a knife off of the counter. She asks what he was doing, and he says he was feeding the dog, but got locked out. Next day, Joyce is leaving class to head down to the elementary school while the Chuck Mangione-style department store Muzak plays. The teacher tells her she's late while the students are being visited by the police, who asks them all why it's important to cooperate with them. Little Curtis steps up to give a nice brown-noser answer that the police need everyone's help so they can protect us all. The kid in the back snaps him with a spitball and calls him a kiss-ass. Sheriff James Brody then asks if anyone knows what murder is, and Debbie immediately raises her hand. After she answers, the cop asks if anyone has found a jump rope that matches the handle he has, then asks if anyone was in the cemetery last night. He tells the students they can either tell him or the teacher if they have any information. As he leaves, Debbie leans over and says,
Bye, Dad.
And I'm pretty sure the movie just told us who the murderer is. The bell rings, but Miss Davis doesn't dismiss the kids until they're all sitting straight, tall, and quiet. Fucking old maids loved this power trip bullshit, didn't they? Joyce pulls Timmy aside and asks where he was last night, and he swears it was feeding the dog. She then says to not tell Mom and Dad about the 2 murders because worrying would be bad for their dad's heart. Debbie, Curtis, and Stephen don't leave with the rest of the class. They approach Miss Davis to ask if everyone can be excused from homework the next Monday because it's their birthday and everyone will be at the party. She refuses and says that just because they were born on the same day doesn't make them special. Debbie agrees and wishes teacher a nice day. Oh, she's definitely the murderer. Hey, wait a minute. It's the first week of June. What the fuck are these kids doing in school? It's supposed to be the middle of summer break. What the hell was going on with the writers of this thing?
Get your shit together!
The three are hanging out at Debbie's house having cookies when music turns on and they run to a closet. Debbie's got a peephole bored into her older sister's room and charges the other two for a show. We're then treated to a lovely dancing topless Julie Brown. Seriously, were there any of us 80s kids that didn't have a crush on Julie? But in this movie she goes by Beverly, so we better go with that. Curtis shoves Steven out of the way for his turn and enjoys a long peep. But right as Beverly starts pulling down her panties, Debbie hits him with the paywall and says the first quarter has run out. You know, I'm wondering if Debbie got a job at EA Sports after doing this movie. Hey, they're not loot boxes, they're surprise mechanics. Barbara yells out the window to Joyce before she passes by and runs out to meet her. They talk all the latest gossip. The murderers, Joyce's horoscopes, the teacher Barbara says has the hots for Joyce. You know, typical 80s stuff. Suddenly, Sheriff Brody rolls up to ask where his daughter is off to. She says to get candles for the birthday cake, then off to the drive-in. He says no to the later plans and for them to be back before dark. Back home, Sheriff Brody puts his gun away and shows off his fancy schmancy new security system. Outside, the three kids are playing when one sets up a jackass-style skateboard trick. Debbie calls her daddy, who walks out and steps over the skateboard. He asks what's wrong, and she throws down a jump rope that's missing a handle. But before he can confront her, Steven bashes him in the head with a baseball bat. Timmy passes by right as they pull the sheriff's body up the stairs, and Debbie cries out,
Mom, Daddy fell!
Mrs. Brody runs out to see what happened, and the kids give Timmy some glares. We then jump straight to the fucking funeral. Debbie's laying it on real thick. Cold-hearted bitch, ain't she? She glances at Timmy and gives Curtis and Steven a nod. Next up, we're playing hide-and-seek at the junkyard. Curtis pulls a fucking handgun on one of the kids and tells him not to copy their hiding place. He tells Timmy it's just a toy, and then tells him to hide in the fridge. Hey, just remember, this movie came out like 5 years before the famous Fridge episode of Punky Brewster. Curtis calls him a chicken and goads him inside. Once in, Curtis jumps out, slams the door shut, and locks Timmy inside. Meanwhile, at the high school, Joyce is pitching a horoscope to a teacher who invites her to get a Coke and talk more about it, but she only turns him down because she's got to look after her little brother. While Timmy struggles to escape, Curtis keeps the junkyard owner busy by showing off his mechanical skills. Back home, Joyce gets a phone call from the folks and assures them she can handle things while they're gone. They ask to talk to Timmy, but none of them think it's too weird that he's not home yet. It was the 80s after all. Back in the freezer, Timmy's MacGyvering his ass out. Using his pen light to see, he jimmies loose some shelving and attempts to pry the lock. He breaks loose and the music sounds like he just freed the galaxy from Zur and the Kodan Armada. He makes it home and tells Joyce what happened, and she immediately says he's lying. That's when he finally admits that the night of the murders, he went over to Debbie's house because he wanted to catch the peep show, but nobody was home. She then tells him to not play with Curtis or to go to the junkyard anymore. Next day, the three bastards are up in their treehouse plotting against the teacher and working on their horrible scrapbook of murder memories. After Mrs. Brody is asleep, Debbie turns off the security system and lets Curtis in so he can swap his toy gun for the sheriff's real gun. At the school, Curtis approaches Miss Davis while she's alone and pulls the gun on her, but she's convinced it's just a toy and turns away so he can get a nice clean shot. Curtis and Steven clean up the blood while Debbie goes outside to meet Timmy. Joyce goes inside, but the body is gone and Steven is hiding in the cabinets with the gun. Outside, Timmy approaches Curtis and clocks him. A teacher breaks up the one-sided fight after a few seconds. Hey, if there's a teacher that fucking close, why didn't she hear the gunshot? While setting up for class, Joyce opens the closet where the brat stored Miss Davis and takes off screaming. The police give her a ride home and she sees a note pinned on the front door that's supposedly from Timmy saying he's playing at the junkyard. She takes off on foot to go find him. Timmy's actually walking through the alleys to get home and passes by Debbie's treehouse. She invites him up to play doctor or ambulance, but he says he'd rather play baseball. He sets up on the railing and we see a horribly placed metal spike as Debbie moves to push him off. But before she can kill him, the phone rings from inside and chases her back. He then asks about the book, and Debbie says it's like a diary before Timmy heads off. Meanwhile, at the junkyard, Joyce is calling out for Timmy, and a cloth-draped face pops up from one of the junker cars. Right as she finds Timmy's pen light inside the freezer, the kids hotwire the car and chase her all over the junkyard. The kids jam the accelerator and tie a rope to the gear shift so they can make their escape. Joyce narrowly dodges being run over right as the police show up. Well, these cops have great timing for missing everything good. Joyce insists there was someone wrapped in a blanket trying to run her down. Safe at home, Joyce watches the news report about Miss Davis's murder, possibly connected to the 2 murdered teens. She tells Timmy from now on she's going to walk him to and from school. Curtis steps out of the house with his favorite toy and starts wandering the neighborhood looking to slake his bloodlust. He finds a couple of kids playing in the backyard, but their dad calls them inside before he can take a shot. Well, that's what happens when you panic a community. They go inside when it gets dark. Joyce is reading off her horoscope charts to entertain Timmy, and Barbara is at home missing her dad. Debbie's keeping a close eye on her sister while her boyfriend confesses how weird it is her tough sheriff dad was killed by a skateboard. She then pushes an arrow through the peephole in what can only be described as heavy-handed foreshadowing. Joyce finally makes it to Debbie's chart and admits it's very odd. Timmy asks why, and she says that because of the eclipse, the sun and the moon were both blocking Saturn, which is responsible for your emotions and how you treat people. Back outside, we catch up with Curtis, who stumbles across Timmy taking out the trash. He goes to a window and lines up his shot, but is chased off when a pair of headlights flood the yard. Down the street, he sees a van pull up and the 2 teens inside start getting naked. Seriously, is this the only town in America without a makeout point? Curtis climbs up on the hood to get his peep on. The girl says she heard someone outside and insists the boy go look. He sticks his neck out the window, but no one's there, so back to the shaggin'. But before they get too far, another noise is made from behind the van, and the guy opens the door to look. It's Curtis, who immediately blows the dude's brains out. The girl moves away from the door, but Curtis climbs inside and blasts her twice. Well, it's finally time for the birthday, and the town must be in such a great mood to celebrate now that the murder rate has skyrocketed in the past week. Curtis is sneaking a taste of the cake frosting and glances at all the deadly chemicals on the counter. I don't know why this is being highlighted like it's abnormal. I never make baked goods unless my countertops are packed to the rafters with cleaners and poisons.
I can't believe you read this stuff.
Says the 80s hippie who fully believes Mercury in retrograde means a particularly heavy flow for any woman born under the 6th house of Blagojevich. Joyce glances back at the closet and laughs while she points out the peephole. My friend's being sexually exploited by her little sister. Too funny. Outside the party is jumping. Practically the whole town is there. Debbie pulls Curtis aside and says Joyce knows too much. He says they won't believe her if they think she's crazy. The 3 rat bastards are called up to blow out the candles while Mrs. Brody tearfully thanks everyone for showing up until she's carried away. The kids tear into their presents while the cake is served. Curtis makes his way back to the kitchen just before the 2nd and 3rd cakes are needed and runs some icing over one of the cakes. Joyce takes the 2nd but comes back for the 3rd, and Curtis hides a bottle of ant poison behind his back. She asks what he did and he says,
Nothing.
with an evil smile. Joyce runs outside and starts knocking cake out of everyone's hands and says Curtis poisoned the frosting. The parents angrily dismiss her claims. Curtis eats some of the frosting in front of everyone, and Joyce accuses the whole thing of being a deliberate act. Back at the house, Joyce and Timmy are blocking the windows when they hear a creaking noise. Joyce grabs a hefty trophy and heads down the hallway to check each room. At the other end of the house, she notices the patio door wide open and asks if Timmy left it that way. Suddenly, the closet door opens and out pops a character so unimportant to the plot he barely even gets a name drop and spends less than 2 minutes on screen. Apparently this is Paul. He's been off to college and she asks about his finals. They talk a bit about college and how Joyce will be joining him after high school, but Joyce says she's skipping college so she can become a reporter. And that's all Paul brings to the table. He doesn't impact the story in any way, shape, or form, and we never see him again. Meanwhile, Barbara is getting all dolled up to go out, but can't find her nail polish. She calls out to Debbie to ask if she took it, but no one answers. She goes to look in Debbie's room and accidentally finds the scrapbook of murder. She takes it to Mrs. Brody, but Debbie says it's Curtis's and he left it there. Naturally, Mrs. Brody could never see her sweet and lovable monster child as a killer, so she immediately believes the brat and says she isn't allowed to play with Curtis again. She gives Barbara the book and tells her to burn it. While watching it burn, Debbie walks up behind Barbara with the fireplace poker, but is caught before she can land a blow. Debbie calls Curtis and tells him to come over with Stephen. Oh right, there's a third little monster in this group. Debbie goes to her closet and sees her sister changing in her room. She picks up a bow and arrow and taps on the wall. Barbara takes a closer look just in time to catch an arrow to the eye. The two boys show up and ask why she didn't wait for them. Curtis pulls the arrow out and the three wrap her up in a blanket to drag her body out the door. But in traditional horror fashion, the minute you start moving a body, someone's gotta call. Mrs. Brody yells from the shower asking who's on the phone, but Debbie says it was a wrong number. The boys drag Barbara outside and Debbie mops up the blood. Mom finds her while cleaning, but she says she accidentally spilled nail polish. This bitch is way too good at this. Even Mom apologizes for snapping at her earlier. And it's time for another Brody funeral. Mom's not doing too well and checks herself into the hospital. Apparently Debbie doesn't require any parental supervision, so the kids have free reign of the house. Curtis uses his electrical prowess to do some security system rewiring so they can play hide and seek. One of their classmates is outside throwing rocks at the windows, and Debbie says her dad installed special glass. Yeah, what a swell guy to protect his family so much. So glad you offed him. The three take off after the classmate and chase him all the way to Timmy's and begin to strangle him with the garden hose. Joyce sees the sprinkler move across the yard and follows it back to the kids just in time to break up the attempted murder. Curtis reminds her that no one's going to believe her after the stunt she pulled at the birthday, and then threatens to call the cops on her for assaulting a minor. Later on, Debbie visits Joyce to let her know her mom's back home, but has to see a shrink and asks if she and Timmy can come over to babysit. And even though this idiot has her horoscope charts to show all these kids are rotten, she just goes right along with it all. What the fuck's the point of doing all that work to confirm your astrology is accurate if you're just going to ignore it? Timmy's asleep on the couch and Joyce puts on her headphones. Curtis and Stephen knock on the window and Debbie unlocks the door. Curtis does his security system bypass and Stephen cuts the phone line. Timmy wakes up just in time to alert Joyce and suddenly Curtis can't shoot for shit. Debbie throws a rope around Timmy's neck, but Joyce chucks a lamp at her. Joyce tries to turn off the security system, but the bypass keeps the doors locked. Eventually, the two make their way to Barbara's room and jam the door shut. Curtis fires randomly through the walls, and Debbie fires arrows through the peephole. Stephen gets in with a knife and gets splashed with nasty fish water and locked in a trunk. Joyce goes for the sheriff's gun, but Curtis informs her it's just a toy. Thankfully, Curtis forgot to count his own bullets, and the two knock him down and hog-tie him. Joyce takes out the security system, and Debbie escapes through a window while Timmy runs next door to call the police. Mrs. Brody pulls up, and Debbie gets in the car to throw Curtis and Stephen under the bus. Mom decides that her last surviving family member isn't going to jail and fucking hits the road. Later on, we see the two boys escorted from the police station, and Curtis gives one last evil smirk to Joyce. But the movie isn't quite over yet. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Debbie's playing with a service jack while Mom comes out to coach her on what her new name is. Beth Simpson. Beth now says she'll be her good little girl from now on. But as they drive off, the camera pans over to the truck driver pinned to death under his own rig. The end. You know, I gotta give credit to the studio for this one. They took a big chance in making a movie with killer kids. I mean, basically you're banking your whole success on lower experienced actors, and if they come off as annoying or unskilled, it's really hard for the rest of the cast and crew to fix that. And I gotta say, by way of diminutive evildoers, these three kids caused a hell of a lot more destruction than the half-pint horrors and the creeps. To be honest, I wouldn't mind seeing this one revisited. Fuck it, everything's rebooted anyway. It's June 9th, 1988, and Stephen and Curtis have been in juvenile detention, laying low and playing the sweet little psychos they are. Debbie sits in a car parked outside waiting for her two friends to be released now that they're no longer minors. The three take a few days to see all the work Debbie has done in preparation for this day and go on a murderous rampage across the state. The only person who can stop them is Dr. Russell, the woman who traded in her dreams of being a reporter to become a psychiatrist. She's been doing her residency at the facility housing Stephen and Curtis, just waiting for the day they are released. And on that day, she follows the car that picked them up. Eh? Sounds like an alright plot synopsis, huh? Lori Lethin played our heroic, holistic teen Joyce, and she's had some nice TV guest appearances over her career. Charlie's Angels, Barnaby Jones, The Dukes of Hazzard, Hill Street Blues, Magnum P.I., The A-Team, Different Strokes, Matlock, Murder, She Wrote. But probably her most high-profile part was Denise in The Day After. That movie traumatized the hell out of me as a kid and still spooks me to this day. But mostly because of Steve Guttenberg. Beverly was played by the always fun Julie Brown, who almost all of us 80s and 90s kids knew in one way or another. Police Academy 2, Earth Girls Are Easy. Back when MTV played music videos, we had Just Say Julie. And then a lot of us got introduced to the world of furries thanks to her voicing Minerva Mink on Animaniacs.
Can a girl get any privacy?
Casey Martell played Timmy, but you might also recognize him from the original Amityville Horror, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, or as Eddie on 19 episodes of Growing Pains. As for the troublesome trio themselves, Debbie was played by Elizabeth Hoy, who had a few spots on 70s and 80s TV and a small part on the Blues Brothers, but nothing after 1984. Andrew Freeman played Stephen, but didn't do much else. Billy Jane definitely had the highest body count as Curtis, but we covered him in an earlier episode when I reviewed Dr. Alien. That's right, folks, the kid who loved peeping on unsuspecting women and murdering in cold blood grew up to become an intergalactic sex experiment. Go check out that episode for more details on his career if you haven't already seen it. Well, that wraps up another raucous recording, and I'm off to get cracking on the next episode. Ooh, it's going to be a good one. So until I greet you again, this is your Manic Merrymaker Sugar Pants. See you in your dreams.